Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello, everyone. My name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, to another episode of the No Limit Selling podcast. And today I have Shampa Bagchi with me. Today she's the founder of Converge Hub and Core Links. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Omar. Happy to be here. Looking forward to a chat.
Me too. What was kind of interesting was, especially on the Converge Hub, you're really looking to find the intersection between business, technology, and people. And oftentimes, the business people are just concerned about business. The technology people is like, don't worry about the user interface or those weird bags of water. We don't care about them. Then you got the human thing, which is ultimately what it's all about. So how do you bridge that gap between those three worlds? Because ultimately, it's only one world, and the people
Yes.
that can actually navigate that truest sense get the best results.
Yes. Omar, now I have always been in technology, with a background of computer science,
Mhm.
and I founded tech companies, live in the Silicon Valley. But to me, it's never been just about technology. It's not because it's in or it's cool, but really what it is about how that technology will help people. How does it help businesses and ultimately, help the people? So that intersection between technology and people and businesses is what always, and I'm always passionate about, that little area. So with Converge Hub, what we aim to do is that we we help you look at people, at your customers as real people, not so much as, depending on what department you are working on in a
Mhm.
business. It's so easy to look at customers like, an email address or a phone number to cold call or an order to fulfill or I don't know, an mailing address to send your invoice to. So it is so easy to do that. But what a Converge Hub aims to do is it gives you a complete 360-degree view of your customers, which helps you look at the customer in a holistic way. And when you do that, when you look at a customer as a person rather than as a phone number or what have you,
Mhm.
things change completely. Things change in the sense, even within your team, when a support person kind of knows about, the kind of things that he has purchased, or a salesperson knows if this customer has had any issues, customer service issues. Basically, when you're looking at the entire data rather than just a subset of what you are, supposed to look at, how you interact, what kind of conversations you have with your customer, how you follow up, everything changes completely. So that's what we help businesses do.
So how is this different than some of your competitors? Because certainly they have a lot of that information too. How do you position it in such a way that the salesperson or the support person can transcend the interface and get to know the person? How is it different than other CRMs?
Yeah, what we do is we let you look at everything in one specific screen, if you say, if you might,
Right.
you can look at it as, even whether you are a support person, you are still looking at the sales number. You don't necessarily have to be able to change things. You don't necessarily, have to be able to have even a say at how, sales should work. I mean, you can, but really what you are doing is you are looking at all the data, all the, maybe the marketing emails that he has looked at, or the timeline, the entire history of how he has gone, through his life cycle as a customer, and look at everything together in one page, and have some insights, some additional insights that we give you, which helps you, look at the customer as a person rather than the whole, a little subset of data.
Excellent. So you have a sales team. How many people in your sales team?
Sales team, I don't have a large sales team. Basically we just, work on words of mouth, but it's me plus two other people.
Nice. So How do you manage the other two people? Like, you're going to be growing this department as you go, you reach a threshold, and then it takes off. So, how are you currently managing your team, and how are you prototyping that leadership so when you do expand, you've got a framework in place?
Sure. So what we are, again, we are big on looking at things in a holistic way. So one of the main things that we do, even if it's salespeople, we let we have a fairly big engineering team, and we have along with it a little bit of marketing and sales and support. So what we try to do is have a very open interaction between all of these teams, so that sales knows exactly what's going on in engineering, what challenges engineering is facing, and there is like a two-way back and forth sharing of knowledge, if you will. Say similarly, even with support, they have regular meetings with sales and with the engineering team. So they are all kind of bouncing ideas off each other, which really help them, not just while selling, but it not just the sales team that benefits for him, but even engineering and support. Just from this interaction, they know exactly what the customers are looking for. They're able to keep their pulse, the finger on the pulse, and they are able to focus more on the customer.
So, do you use betas to kind of test out new additions before it goes live?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We yeah, we do that.
Nice. So, where are you heading now? Like, what's the next thing for Converge Hub? Like, what's the next plateau you're going towards?
Oh yeah, Converge Up. There are big things in the pipeline. So we are in the process of building an entirely new Converge Hub. So that's going to be out next year. So we're really really excited about that. And so again, we have this fundamental thing about looking at a 360-degree view of looking at a customer as a person, and we are really going to enhance that part of it. So right, starting from the time when a customer is really cold, maybe it's not your customer, it's a lead. You can't even say it's a lead, it's probably a cold email on your list. From that time until that person, guiding them through the entire life cycle of sales, until the customer is not just a paying customer but a happy paying customer.
Right.
Yeah, so your advocate even. So that entire life cycle is already managed within Converge Hub, but we are going to focus on that life cycle, and specifically we are going to focus on how are you going to identify that person as that single person throughout that journey. And that really, even if it seems an easy thing to do in technology, it isn't, just because when you're coming in, how do you track a person who is on your website, maybe made a couple of visits, to how do you track that person when he's actually buying from you, and the revenue that you have generated. So tracking him in through the entire process of sales is something that we aim to do in even better way in the new Converge Hub. Then we have like a conversations kind of tab, where we are going to track every single thing that is done by this person. So whether that's a website visit, whether that's a form that he has filled up, whether that's a tweet that he has sent. So any kind of interaction with between that person and your company is something that's going to be tracked in a very different manner. And we are going to use all these new technologies that has come up, AI, to give you insights. So yeah, there are very 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 exciting things coming up.
Brilliant. Some of your competitors have a lot of marketing function built into the CRM, so it
Yes.
basically becomes a one-stop shop.
Yes.
So, do you have that as well in your solution?
Yes, we do. We already have marketing. We do a lot of email marketing, even social media marketing currently. And again, that's going to be even more enhanced in the new version. We are going to focus a lot on the marketing side of things, and because one thing currently we don't focus on so much is your website. We do have website forms that you can build, and we do track it. But there are many other functions out there which we are going to focus more and more in this next version, in that's coming out next year.
Brilliant. So, as a leader, you've got engineering, you've got support, you got sales. How do you manage everyone?
Mhm.
And do you have direct reports, or are you like a very flat organization?
I do have direct reports. I have some team leads that I primarily have daily meetings with, but at the same time we are also a very flat organization, so everybody knows if they really want to talk to me, they have having any kind of issues, they are welcome to come and talk to me. And there's one thing that I keep telling them, because a thing about when you are working, when you're working especially with a very tiered organization, is that the team members, especially the ones who are more junior, tend to lose sight of the big picture. And especially you have to make sure that the big picture is communicated to them in order for them to know that big picture, and how they just tend to focus on their piece of code, or those maybe 5 or 10 customer calls that I have to make, or those support tickets I have to answer, but they don't really look at that big picture. So one to even make them understand that, one I have a favorite story that I keep telling them, and
Hmm?
so I could go ahead and
Please.
with your permission. So yeah, what I keep telling them is, there was this construction site where there were these three construction workers working, and one person passing by notices these three construction workers working, building something. It's a very hot day. So he stops by, he decides to stop by and talk to them. So he goes and talks to the first construction workers and asks them, what you do. So his answer is, can't you see, I'm just, laying bricks. I'm building this foundation and I'm laying one brick on top of the other. So he then goes on to the next person and he asks, what are you doing? And he's doing the exact same thing. And he says that I'm building this wall. So it looks like this is some kind of a building, and I just have to build this wall. So that's what I'm doing. He goes to the third person and asks the same question, what are you doing? So he says, I am building this church, and this thing that I'm working on right now is actually going to be that altar where people are going to come to worship. So everyone's doing the exact same thing, though what changes here is the perspective of how you are looking at what it is that you're doing.
Right.
And just by changing that perspective, how you are doing your work and how you are approaching your work changes completely. So that's my favorite story that I keep telling my employees.
Nice. So one of the things that, companies struggle with, here's the typical kind of things. Number one, people don't know what other people do, roles and responsibilities.
Yes.
You think it'd be very fundamental, but oftentimes it is not.
Yes.
The second thing is, who are we? What are we trying to achieve? Which is like dumbfounding to leaders, because like we're communicating that all the time, but not as effectively as they could.
True.
So how do you ensure that you keep your company on track and that they're actually getting what you're trying to communicate?
Yes. What we try to do here is, one, we already talked about, we have meeting between teams all the time, so they're between departments, so they are all communicating with each other, because what really matters at the end of the day between your team is how you're supporting your customer, right? How you are really adding value to your customers.
Right.
So, and even with the more junior team members, even if they are not directly talking to the customers, we do have many of them sit on those calls, or whether they are support calls, whether they are even development or testing kind of calls, we have them sit on in there, so they don't lose sight of what's important, number one. And then, of course, it's a matter of just being there for them, being able to highlight what it is that we are doing, being able to talk to them, having daily, regular meetings with them. And I think it just boils down to communication and just talking to them about what it is that we are going to do.
So how do you know you're being effective? Because oftentimes we think we're communicating. So I'm looking for, other CEOs could go, oh, we need to do that to make sure that it's not just communication is effective communication. How do you ensure it's effective? Is it just repetition, or what are you using to make sure everyone's on the same page?
Well, a lot of it is, just like you said, it is repetition, number one, because it is so important. I mean, we would think that we give one set of maybe instructions, or maybe even talking to them about what's important, and you would think that's enough, but it never is. So it's a matter of continuously repeating yourself, and also technology helps too, having one place or one archive where everybody can go to
Hmm.
do certain things, to find certain things. It's one place where they can see what's the next thing coming up. And we do that. We absolutely use technology for it. And again, these things, it's never perfect, so you're always striving towards that goal.
Right.
So that's where we are at. We keep improving and we keep improving. But are we at 100%? No. But yeah, but it's just a matter of, I think, making sure you just communicate and making sure that information is available whenever it's needed.
Absolutely. I think that third thing that really needs to add in there is are people understanding? And oftentimes, one of the things that some leaders do is at every meeting is like, all right, John, you get to kick this off.
Yeah.
Who are we? What are we doing? And it just keeps people on their toes. And two,
Mhm.
if there's any kind of miscommunications, they can be picked up right away because you've probably worked in a lot of companies, and that's one of the weak links ends up being communications. Here's the other one that I want to figure out how you do is oftentimes people tend to be selfish, tend
Mhm.
to be defensive,
Mhm.
but to get highly efficient teams, it can't be about me, it's got to be about us.
Yes.
So how do you get people to leave that human nature of, my department's the best and we're fantastic, to it's not about us, it's about how do we serve our customers in a way that our organization wins. So how do you manage the culture?
Oh yeah, that's something that we have to work on a daily basis, because yeah, we do see all the time, especially in the kind of meetings that I'm talking about, in interdepartmental meetings where everybody is trying to kind of, especially when things go wrong, everybody's trying to make sure
Yeah,
their department doesn't
looks
really
good. Yeah.
get the blame. Happens all the time. But then again, it's a matter of just making sure, and I have to verbally repeat it and say it, that it's really not about finding a scapegoat. This meeting is not about finding a scapegoat. This meeting is not about finding out who did it right or who did it wrong. It's mostly about ensuring, how do we make sure, if a mistake's been done, it doesn't happen again. If there's something we can do better, it's about identifying what are the things that we need to get right next time. And usually it's really not so much about one person's fault. Sometimes it is, but that's really very rare.
Yes.
Usually it's about how maybe somebody misinterpreted something, or somebody
Hmm.
did communicate but it didn't really come out the way you were expecting. So it's really fudgy. It's wrong. You really cannot blame it on a person, and that's not what we are looking to do. It's really about how do we make sure, if there is a communication issue, how are we going to do it better next time. What is it that we have to, is there any documentation we need to put in place? Even, is there any software we need to build? What is it that we need to do? So we just have to make it clear that there is no scapegoat here.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good word because oftentimes that's what companies look for is who to blame, and very much
Yes.
getting people to realize that we need to figure out when a mistake's being made quickly
Mhm.
and focus on how do we fix it as
Yes,
opposed to how do we assign blame for it.
exactly.
And also to get people to have courage because oftentimes in organizations, if there's a mistake being made, oftentimes people will hide it.
Yes.
And so, how do we build a culture where people go, I got an issue, and then we can all discuss it? Like, one of the things that drives me crazy is management teams meet. And when I think of the expense of a meeting of managers, let's say in a mid-sized organization, if everybody was a consultant, all the VPs were consultants, they'd
Mhm.
all be charging $1,000 an hour,
Yeah.
CEO probably more, and that meeting just costs the company $30,000. And what
Yes.
we did was just do a check in how we're doing, and what it should be is what's a problem we can solve in this hour where we get the smartest people in the room doing something strategic for the company.
Yes.
And then that becomes a balancing act for CEOs of how do you get people to focus on what's most important and how do you get to make sure the culture stays strong and then also get your job done.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's yeah, what you said is so absolutely right, and there is a balancing act right there, because when we are all in a meeting, we are really not doing that work. That pile of work is not getting smaller. But and we all know how much that meeting is costing us. But at the same time, if we don't do that meeting, it's probably going to cost us more. So that's one way of looking at things is it's maybe it's costing us, but what if we didn't have the meeting, and then those challenges that we resolved in the meeting, so those challenges never really showed up in real life, which would have showed up if we did not have this meeting. So that's for me one way to keep perspective.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it's just making sure that those probably that 1 or 1.5 hours we are spending in a correct way. And by correct way, I don't really mean it's always official. Sometimes in those meetings we are just having a personal talk. We are just exchanging news about something that happened, maybe a family member, something about a family member. And as a CEO, you're always keeping track of that, that time. But at that same time, that's what culture is made up of,
That's
right?
the glue that holds it
That's the
together.
glue,
Absolutely.
exactly. Exactly. You cannot assign a dollar sign to it. There is no dollar figure on that. That's what you build when you're having these meetings, and sometimes letting just the conversation flow. uh, I mean, you can look at it both sides. Sometimes if it gets too much, maybe you rein it back a little bit. But if you don't let that happen, then there is not going to be that bonding. And when something goes wrong, then people are not going to be able to lean on each other, or not going to be able to trust each other enough to be able to say, here, I made a mistake. Maybe I goofed up, or maybe you did that one little thing you did. Maybe that was not the right thing to do, because people will just be defensive and making sure they don't get assigned the blame.
Absolutely. I was working with a company out in Silicon Valley where they hired me to come in to work with the sales team. And it was like, we talk about selling on value, but our salespeople keep on selling on price
Hmm.
and they discount.
Yeah.
Help us with this. And when we started looking at it, it turned out that it wasn't a sales department issue primarily.
Hmm.
It was the sales department did not trust the engineering department because the engineering department had said, hey, this new release is coming out on January 1st, this new product. Go ahead, start selling it. And then we're in
Hmm.
August, it still isn't out.
Right.
And then engineering is like, we were talking to the marketing people and they said, this is what's going to be required 2 years from now. Start
Right.
building this. And that,
Hmm.
so there was a distrust between the departments. And when we
Yes.
solved that issue, the salespeople started selling because they could trust that the customer is going to be looked after. So oftentimes trust is such a critical element of what we do. If we've got that foundation, we can be nimble, we can be quick, we can make mistakes, we can rebound very quickly. And so that's part of the job of the CEO is to how do you get people to put the team before self?
Yes. Exactly.
So before we part company, I've got three questions for you. Number one, what's a lesson you've learned in the last few years that you would go, yeah, let me share with you. This is what I learned. This is how I learned it. And this is like really, really useful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there have been many lessons that
Oh,
I
yeah.
have learned. Yeah. So being a CEO, being trying to manage people, there are so many lessons. But yeah, there's something that I would like to probably share with you as an entrepreneur. I learned my lesson as an entrepreneur in a slightly in a way that's little difficult even. Um, so I have part of my team working from India, especially the engineering team is working
Hmm.
out of our office in India. And when I just had started off, we had this very one person whom I probably trusted more than I should have, and there was a lot of money that was stolen, and this was very early days of the company.
Yes.
So I kind of lost faith, and I was really upset with the fact that I was blaming myself. I was of course blaming that person, and I should not have trusted with that person with the money. So, and what happens is, when something like this happens, you tend to kind of lose sight of being able to even trust people.
Right.
And that very day, somehow, I was even thinking of, maybe shut down that office and move over everything to more closer home here in the US. And all kinds of things were going on in my mind. And that very day, had to pick up somebody from a railway station in India. And so I was there. And I saw this person who was, selling some trinkets. Probably he had some 12 or 15, some trinkets, some toys kind of a thing that he was selling. He really looked like, he needed the money. He really looked like, his clothes were in tatters. He looked like he hadn't eaten. So I just told him that, asked him how much that entire thing or the entire set cost. He gave me a number. I just gave it to him. And he started counting everything and handing me those, making sure I got the exact number of that, whatever he was selling. And I really didn't need those, so I didn't have any place for them in my house. I said, I really don't need this. You can keep that and sell it to another person. I was really trying to help that person. But what he said, no, if you don't take this, and I don't need the money, I'm an entrepreneur. So to me, that whole thing, it changed my perspective about what it means to be an entrepreneur. It is really not about that money you're making or losing. It is, that pride you have in, however you're helping your customer in whatever it is that you're selling, your product or your service, how you're adding value to this world. So that person really opened my mind just by refusing to be anything more than a businessman or an entrepreneur.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And may I tell that story to others?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So it's kind of interesting. Oftentimes we're so busy worrying about ourselves and whatever mess we've gotten ourselves into that we
Yes.
don't realize the universe or God or whatever you want to call it sends down messengers, which are other human beings,
Exactly.
just at the right time. And way too many people miss that
Yes.
message.
Yes.
And so paying attention and being present is really important.
Oh, absolutely. So this person, I really, at that point of time, it was universe or gods or whoever's way of telling me that all is really not lost with the world. I mean, you have all kinds of different people, have on one hand, you have people who steal from you. On other hand, you have such honest people, who will kind of, have that, be an entrepreneur, even if it means you're foregoing some, money you really need, you could really use.
So Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, had
Mm-hmm.
written a book, and the book was about, one chapter about family,
Mm-hmm.
politics, business. And it's like, if you're business associates and thing turns badly and is horrible, just consider this. At least you're not dead.
Yeah.
And the family chapter was the same, the way it ended. At least you're not dead.
Right.
And money will come and go.
Yes.
And there's more than enough money out there.
Exactly.
Oftentimes not in my hand, which is really upsetting. But if you lose some, as long as you learned the lesson from it, we're not dead. We're going to go on. And that's what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I heard something the other day. Somebody was mentioning it's not making a ton of money and then lying on a beach or whatever you want to do, because then you're like, now what?
Yeah.
It's the
Exactly.
journey.
Oh, yes.
It's the entrepreneurial journey is the juice that keeps you going.
Yes.
And if you're a composer, is composing keeps you going. If you stop composing, you will die.
Exactly.
Not literally, but the light in your soul is going to be diminished.
Absolutely. So
Shampa,
it's not. Sorry,
please
it's
go on.
never about the money that you get. It's never about what you're getting. It's about what I believe it's about what you're being, the person that you're being while you are working on your business, the person that you are, whatever you are learning, and the person you will be as a result of learning that those lessons that you are learning. This is the journey that you have chosen to take, and it's going to take you somewhere, and it's all about that. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Brilliant. This was such a delightful conversation. I can't wait for our next. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much, Umar. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.